So, Brian, let's talk a little bit about the chaos that was on Saturday. And I thought college football was done with chaos for a little while. I thought this was going to be somewhat of a quiet Saturday as far as all that is concerned. And I was not correct in that regard by any stretch of the imagination. Favorites went down. Rankings are going to be jostled. And here we go. Once again, really not knowing what the committee is going to do on Tuesday night because of everything that just went down. And again, what we see on Tuesday will project forward as to kind of what the committee is thinking, how they want to kind of prop up some of these conference games. And, are they going to move certain teams into the top 25 to help out some other teams? Like, what is this going to look like? How is it going to be? There's just a lot to dissect here, Brian. And let's just start with the games that were upsets. How about that? So let's start with, Ohio State and Michigan, since that was the first first game that was slated in the day and the first upset of the day. 13-10, I do believe, was the score. Michigan prevails over Ohio State. And then, of course, the chaos ensues after that game is over. But what does the committee do with Ohio State? That's going to be my question to you. What do you think the committee does with Ohio State? I did find it funny that Dave Portnoy tweeted out that since Michigan beat Ohio State, they're going to be in contention again. They're on the bubble, which was funny. But anyway,
I don't find anything that Dave Portnoy tweets.
I get it. I was like, okay, dude, whatever. So what do they do with Ohio State? How far do they fall? What do you got?
Best thing to happen to Ohio State this weekend was Miami getting beat. Because I think with Miami getting beat, I still think Ohio State hosts. The committee clearly likes Ohio State. They had them number 2 with a loss. And the loss was to number 1. I think if they'd even lost to Penn State, they'd still probably be top 5 right now with 2 losses. The committee loves Ohio State. But the problem is now you have 2 losses, but you just lost to a 7-5 team at home.
That's tough.
That's gonna hurt them. So when you look at the rankings now, Vince, there's now a top 4 that's just better than everybody else resume wise,
right.
And that's
kind of an undisputed top 4.
Yeah, Oregon, Texas, Penn State, Notre Dame in some order. After that, man, there's a lot. There, you've got 1 loss SMU, who I think is criminally underrated. By the way, I've been saying that for a while. They're not only beating teams, they're beating teams convincingly, a lot like the arguments we've used for Notre Dame. They have a couple ugly wins in there that are different than from what Notre Dame has, and their loss is a very good loss. But, it's going to be interesting, because the way it's supposed to go is not like the AP rankings, where the AP rankings just dropped Ohio State behind Oregon. Georgia and Tennessee, correct? I think, or at least behind Georgia. I
didn't really look at the AP, to be honest with you.
I think they had Ohio State behind. So the AP had Notre Dame behind Tennessee and Georgia, and the coaches poll had them behind Georgia, Tennessee, and SMU. I don't know that that's necessarily going. They're not going to finish behind SMU in the at-large category because either A, SMU is going to win the ACC and get an auto bid, or B, SMU loses to 3-loss Clemson and they fall behind Ohio State. So SMU, I'm not worried about. But when you look at it, Vince, and say, where do they go in relation to the 2-loss teams that everybody's talking about, which is Miami, Georgia, Tennessee. Now in Ohio State's in that category. How do they rank
Ohio State too? Yeah.
I think Miami falls behind all of them. And now the question is, where does Ohio State fit into that? And that's the answer I don't know, to be honest with you, Vince. I think it's very clear that Miami will fall down. Ohio State, the thing about the Michigan game, Vince, is they were just outplayed. It wasn't like a fluky game, in my opinion. Michigan was a misplay here, a misplay there from making it even worse, in my opinion. And Ohio State didn't score a touchdown until late second quarter. And that was it. And they hardly I feel like they hardly really threatened Michigan in the second half, man. You know what I mean? It was just like, get to the second half, and it's like, what? They go punt, interception, missed field goal, and a drive in which they had 0 yards gained. You only were even in field goal territory because Michigan threw a pick. You know what I mean? You go 3-and-out punt, I mean, your last. Here's what they did. They had a 10-play, 56-yard drive to start the second half. Here's what they did in every drive afterwards: 7 plays, 31 yards, interception; 4 plays, 0 yards, missed field goal; 3 plays, 9 yards, punt; 4 plays, 1 yard, turnover on downs. They didn't even threaten Michigan in the second half, except when Michigan allowed them to threaten them in the second half with that interception. I mean, that last, what they have, like 30 seconds left, that was pathetic. Like, how do you not just drop back and say, let's try to throw a bomb to Jeremiah Smith and let him out jump the entire defense? I mean, like, where was it? It was kind of ridiculous, honestly, watching them play. That was such a poor performance. I think you have to drop them at least behind Georgia. And I'm in a debate with someone today, some Georgia fan who I thought I respected, and then he just made such ridiculous arguments today. I'm like,
I
I don't know if
read
I
your
respect
debate,
you
by the
anymore.
way, and I thought that was
It's like
hilarious.
Georgia, when you look at Georgia, of the 2 lost teams, I think they have to rank number 1. Because you look at their overall resume, Ohio State doesn't have better wins than them, really, because Georgia beat Texas, who's number 2. Ohio State beat Penn State, who's number 3. Both of them won on the road. Both Georgia's win was more convincing over Penn State, over Texas, than Ohio State's was over Penn State. Georgia's second loss is to a team that currently ranks 14th. Now, they got their butts handed to them, but they ranked 14th. Whereas Ohio State just lost to a team, Vince, that went 6-5. Was 6-5 coming into this game, and had lost double digits to Illinois, had lost by double digits to Washington, got blown out by 3 touchdowns by Oregon, got blown out, lost by 19 in a game that was not nearly as close as the 19-point score to Texas, and then had a, I guess, good loss to Indiana in a game where Indiana played like crap and still beat Michigan in that game. I mean, this is not a very good football team, dude. It's just not. And they handled you for 60 minutes, handled Ohio State for 60 minutes, physically handled them. So I think the debate is now who's higher, Tennessee or Georgia or Ohio State. I think Georgia has to be ahead of them. I do. I think Georgia's will be ahead of Ohio State. The question is, will they put them ahead of Tennessee? And that's one I don't have an answer for, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
I don't have an answer for right now.
It's funny because I've been pretty spot on with kind of the way they've been doing things. I think we all have, kind of understanding the way that they view the SEC and the block of teams that all have the same amount of losses and, that kind of stuff, right? And as I was going through this, I just feel like they're going to take Ohio State. While I do think that they do love Ohio State, I agree. I don't see them splitting up that Georgia-Tennessee block in the rankings. You know what I mean? I just I slotted Ohio State right behind the block. So I've got Ohio State dropping to 7. With Georgia being the number 1 of that group. I agree with you on that one. And then I think they're going to drop Miami. We can kind of parlay into Miami, right? With what happened.
Real quick, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Do you think, how confident are you that they keep SMU behind Ohio State?
I am confident enough that I have them behind Ohio State. Right behind, I have SMU at 8, and I have Ohio State at 7. Now, here's the difference. Brian. I think that'll be for this week. And then if SMU wins the conference title, I think then they leap.
It won't matter anyway because they're going to be ahead of them.
Agreed.
They're ranked ahead.
Right.
They're going to be seated ahead of them, even
Correct.
if they're not ranked.
It won't matter. Your ranking will not matter at that point. I completely agree with you. But I do think that they will leap them in the rankings and in the seedings if they win the ACC championship. I think they'll be behind on Tuesday, but I think it's a 1 week. It's a 1 week thing, and then once SMU does what I think they're going to do in the ACC championship, I think they leap them. So
I think that they're going to split up the 2 SEC teams and have Ohio State in the middle. I'm not saying that's what they should do. I'm saying that's what I think they will do. And that's what I think they will do. I'm looking at this. I mean, I would personally have SMU higher than Tennessee. I would have them higher than Ohio State right now. I mean, people acting like SMU is still some Group of 5 team, and they're not.
I know they are.
No, I know you know that, but it's
I
like
know
the way they're talked about is like
Yeah.
there's some second class. They're like they talk about SMU like they do Boise.
Yeah.
And I'm like, guys, they've played a full
100%.
Power 5 schedule. You know, their only loss is to the number 19 team in the country. You know, they went on the road and played a good Louisville team who smacked Clemson and just blew out a SEC Kentucky team, blew out Pitt, you know, blew out Virginia, blew out Cal this weekend. That was not an easy team to blow out. Cal is not an easy team to blow out. Cal's losses this year, Vince, have been by 5, 1, 2, 1, 8, and 32.
Oof.
Guess which one the 32 was against? It was against
Yeah.
SMU. So I think SMU is criminally underrated, and I think it's this continual the ACC sucks type of conversation, which I don't think is necessarily accurate. And Clemson really did damage to the if Clemson would have beat South Carolina, which they should have, they outplayed them until the final 5 minutes. Then you've got Kentucky gets blown out by Louisville, Clemson beat South Carolina, and Georgia Tech took Georgia to 8 overtimes. Like we're having I think a different conversation today. Clemson screwed that up royally by choking that game away against them. And they could make things even worse by beating SMU this weekend because I could see the committee dropping SMU out. But I do think that there's a chance that they leave them in, and they should leave them in if they're going to say, well, we're not going to punish teams for losing their conference championship games. Well, then that needs to be true for every conference.
Absolutely. We'll see.
And that needs to be true for SMU as well.
Yeah, we'll see.
So we'll see.
Look, if SMU takes care of business the way that they should, none of this conversation even matters because I think they're going to be the 3 seed. You know what I mean? And they're going to have every opportunity to prove themselves.
I do still think there's a chance a second ACC team gets in. I do think there's still a chance that 2-loss Miami gets in over a 3-loss Alabama team or a 3-loss Ole Miss team.
Wow.
I think Alabama's of the 2 has the best chance to get in. I don't think South Carolina looked good enough against Clemson to leap those 2 teams.
I completely agree with that.
I think South Carolina needed to beat Clemson the way they've beat other teams. Their last 2 Power 4 wins were ugly wins over good teams, but still ugly wins.
Sure. I will say this ranking on Tuesday, wherever they end up putting Miami, is going to be huge. It's going to be huge because they're idle, right? They're idle. It's Clemson versus SMU. So they're idle this week. And if they're on the outside looking in this week, I don't think they get in. You know what I mean? So, like, I have them at 13 this week.
Then they'd be out.
And so they would be out for me.
They'd be out.
You know what I mean? So
I just
that's going to be huge where they
lost to a 9-3 team. To me, helps them.
Okay.
Unless the committee just says, well, the ACC is just garbage and it doesn't matter.
Right.
Because, like, again, it could be. Alabama's got more losses, and they just lost this weekend. Here's what works in Miami's favor. Just playing a little bit of an advocate here for Miami. Their first loss was to a team that just took Georgia to 8 overtimes, right? Their second loss was to a team that's 9-3 on the road to a team that's 9-3. Like I have a hard time saying, well, Bama lost to a team that went 6-6. Actually, excuse me. Bama lost to 2 teams that went 6-6. And then also lost to their third loss. Well, I'm drawing a blank on. They lost to Vanderbilt. They lost to Oklahoma. Oh, and then they lost to Tennessee. So that's a good loss. And then Ole Miss all 3 of Ole Miss's losses were to unranked teams. I think there's a chance Bama leaps them. I don't think Ole Miss is going to leap Miami. I do think there's a chance they'll put Bama in because I think the committee is desperate to get a big name program in. And let's be honest, Miami's not a big name anymore.
Nope.
From a fan base standpoint.
No, I agree. Right now Alabama's my last team in.
I think that's what I think is going to happen.
Alabama's my last team in based on what I think is going to happen on Tuesday. So they get in as the 11 because Arizona State gets in as the 12 as things are right now, right? So Alabama's my last team in, and Ole Miss and Miami are my first 2 out. So I'm right with you with what you're thinking. But again, I think where they put Miami this week will be massive, whether they're in or whether they're out, because I have a hard time seeing an idle Miami jumping other idle teams this weekend. You know what I mean?
And Bubs in the chat made the point, Vince. He says no one else with Bama's resume would get in, and he's spot on.
I don't disagree with you. I really don't. I do want to make it very clear, like what we're talking about here is what we think the committee is going to do. This isn't the Irish breakdown rankings, right? This is what we think the committee is going to do based on what they've been doing this entire time and what they've done in the past to a degree. But I also think it's going to be fascinating to see how they handle all of the conference championships, right? What the outcomes of those championships and then how they handle those, I think are going to be fascinating because there's multiple championships that involve two teams that are in the rankings right now.
Right.
Does somebody fall out? How far down do they fall? You made a great point when we were talking on the phone before the show about they have set the precedent when in 2020, when Notre Dame played in the ACC championship, they were number 2 and they only dropped to 4.
Because that speaks to this notion that people have this. People, I think, take what other people say and they turn it into what they want it to be. And so what the committee has said is they're not really going to punish teams for losing in conference championship games. Now, how I read that is based on history is you will move around a little bit, but you're not going to drop 8, 9 spots, 5, 6 spots because you lost in conference title game. They're not going to punish you like if Miami would have won this weekend and gone 11-1 and then lost to SMU in the ACC title game. They're not going to drop Miami out of the playoffs if they were ranked 9th coming in, right?
Right.
Something like that. But as they showed with Notre Dame in 2020, Notre Dame got punished, but they didn't get knocked out. They were the 2 seed going into the ACC title game. They dropped down to the 4 seed.
Right.
You have to do that. Otherwise, why do these games matter? You can't punish the winner and then, you can't reward the winner and then just pretend like the game didn't count for the team that lost. So I do think that, like, for example, if Penn State loses to Oregon by 17 points, I don't think they're locked into the number 5 seed. I think they're locked into the playoffs right now.
Sure.
Penn State is a playoff team right now. I don't care if Oregon beat them by 30. They're not going to drop them out of the playoff.
They're not going to drop them 10 spots. Like, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
Could they drop them down a spot or 2 or 3? Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
If Georgia gets just boat raced by Texas this weekend, I think they're going to lose, but I don't think they're going to get boat raced. I think it's going to be a competitive game. But if they lose to Texas this weekend, they're not going to drop Georgia out of the playoff because they have 3 losses.
No.
Are they going to lock them into the number 6 seed? I don't think that's the case. Or the 7 seed. I don't think that's the case. I could see them dropping them down to 8 or 9.
I think if Georgia loses, right. Oh, I completely agree. They'll still be in the playoff, but seeding is going to change. Like I fully anticipate the seeding to change based on what happens on Saturday. And for all the Notre Dame fans out there that are like, Notre Dame's guaranteed the 5, you better hope that all the favorites win.
They're guaranteed to be at home. That's it.
Agreed. They're guaranteed to be at home because if there are 2 conference championship games that if the underdog wins, and I'm talking about the SEC and I'm talking about the Big Ten, if the underdog wins either one or both of those, Notre Dame's getting bumped down, guys. I hate to break it to you. Like, you can say, like, should Notre Dame be the 5 seed on Tuesday? I think they should be. I don't know if they will be. I think they should be. Okay. Right. I think they should be ranked 3rd overall. Okay. If you want to flip Penn State, fine. 3rd, 4th. It doesn't really matter to me. Okay. At this point, but you better be rooting for Texas to beat Georgia and you better be rooting for Oregon to beat Penn State, because if either one of those teams win, that's a spot that Notre Dame's going to drop. If both underdogs win, Notre Dame's going to end up being 7. That's how I see it playing out. So if you're looking for a rooting guide, you need to root for favorites on Saturday. That in my opinion, that's what you need to root for if you want Notre Dame to be the 5 seed.
Right.
So
I don't really care. I think as long as they're 5 or 6, I'm good. And I think what I feel comfortable saying right now is I think Notre Dame is guaranteed the 5 or the 6. I don't see Notre Dame falling. Like, even if Georgia beats Texas, I think Notre Dame will stay ahead of Texas. I do.
Really?
I do.
Okay.
Because if you look at the 2 resumes, they have a 10-point win at Texas A&M. Notre Dame has a 10-point win at Texas A&M. But overall, the Notre Dame, I don't know if they'd say the strength of schedule is better, but the overall resume I think is better than Texas. Okay. And then Texas would have said, okay, you only played 2 good teams all year, and you lost to that team both times. I think there's a chance. Now, I wouldn't be completely shocked if Georgia beats Texas and they drop Texas and then Notre Dame ends up getting a 7. That's still possible.
Yeah.
But I think that because I think
Okay.
what would happen there, Vince, is I think in that instance, if Texas loses and Penn State loses, then I think Notre Dame would stay ahead of one of them, but fall behind the other, or stay behind the other. Excuse me. They would jump ahead of one of them, stay behind the other. Does that make?
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah, no,
I can see them. Okay, let's leave Texas ahead of them, but let's not leave Texas and Penn State ahead of them. That's where I think it would fall. But we do have so I'm confident they're going to be the 5 or the 6. But the way they could fall to the 7, to your point about the favorites, is if Penn State beats Oregon, Oregon will be ranked ahead of Notre Dame.
Correct.
If Georgia beats Texas, there's a chance that Texas could remain ahead of Notre Dame.
That's what I'm saying. Yes.
Right. I just think it's more likely that Notre Dame would not fall lower than the 6 seed at this point in time if Penn State loses and Texas.
If Penn State and Texas both lose, they're both behind Notre Dame.
I think,
in my opinion.
I don't know about that. I think one of them could stay ahead.
No, I'm sorry.
Could stay ahead of Notre Dame.
Texas and Oregon need to win. That's where I'm at. Texas and Oregon need to win. That gets you your 5 seed if you're a Notre Dame fan. It really is that simple.
No lower than 6.
Who's going to be ahead of them?
I do think that if Penn State plays undefeated number 1 Oregon to a 60-minute field goal game, it's back and forth, they're in the game. I do think it's possible that the committee leaves Penn State ahead of them. I think it's possible. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying it's possible that they could leave Penn State ahead of them. If it's a 60-minute game where it's just back and forth, Penn State had chances to win, Oregon walks off with a field goal, something like that. If they win where it's just a 7 to 14 point game where they're just clearly the better team, then I think Penn State would, because I don't think the gap between Notre Dame and Penn State is as big as some people make it out to be.
It's not.
But I think that this committee, this version of the committee, has shown they put a lot of stock into good losses. And if Penn State goes on a neutral field and goes toe-to-toe with the number 1 team in the country for 60 minutes, I think they're going to look at that very favorably and not negatively like some people think. So so it's not even just Oregon winning. It just needs to be they're clearly the better team. Yeah. Because then you could say Penn State played 2 games against 2 top 10 teams, and they really just got outplayed by both of them. That's kind of how I look at it.
See what happens. We'll see what happens. Like I said, if you are a Notre Dame fan and you want that 5, you better be rooting for the favorites no doubt. On Saturday. You know what I mean? And you can get all the chaos you want behind you, but you better be rooting for the favorites to win if you want to lock in on that 5. And look, if Notre Dame's able to get the 5, I mean, that's a great spot to be. Obviously, you're going to get the 12, which right now projects as the Big 12 champion, and then you get probably Boise State at a neutral field at a bowl game. I like that path. And then at that point, then you would have probably Oregon in the Final Four. I mean, but getting to the Final Four, you're going to play a good team regardless. I don't really care who it is. You're going to play a good team. That's fine. And I understand your argument that you made the other day about Notre Dame wanting to, you want to go through like the big dogs and all that. I want to win a championship, man. I don't really care who they play, to be perfectly honest with you. Because in a 12-team playoff, you're never going to be denied the championship if you win it. You know what I mean? Because
they'll spend the heck out of it, and I just don't want to. It's not. And it's not even just that though. It's more about it's about proving yourself. It's just about that's kind of how I am. I'm, I'm one of those people that believes to be the man, you got to beat the man, right? I mean, I grew up watching, Ric Flair back when it was, what was it called? Before it was even WCW, I forget what it was called, NWA or something like that. I'm just, that's how I want to be. So it's like I get so tired of people saying like, oh, I hope that they avoid SEC in round 2. Why? If you're afraid of playing an SEC team this year, then you just don't think this Notre Dame team is really that good.
Yeah.
And I know that's not where you're coming from.
No, not at
you're
all.
Just like, dude, I don't really care. I mean, you know what I mean? But I'm NWO. That's what no, NWO was the Wolfpack. NWA was the Northwest or like the something wrestling association or whatever. It was like back when the Four Horsemen like were the OG Four Horsemen, not like with Dean Malenko and people like that. Like before it was WCW. But I want to beat Ohio State. I want to beat Georgia. I want to beat Bama. I want to play those teams and beat those teams. I don't want to duck the best teams. And so, but if Notre Dame earns that number 5 seed, I'm not going to be like,
bingo,
no, give it up because I want a tougher path. I mean, you earned that.
Correct.
I just don't want it to be. Yeah, I just don't want to be like, oh, I hope that, because it'd be great to not have to. Because I actually think that puts more pressure on Notre Dame. You could be in the semifinals and people are still going to be saying, "You haven't played anybody. You haven't played anybody. You haven't played anybody."
Anyway. They'll say that anyway.
You know, they won't say that if you beat Georgia and Ohio State in the first 2 rounds, or Georgia and Texas in the first 2 rounds.
Yeah, they will.
Yeah, but they'll look.
Ohio State lost to Michigan. They're no good.
More stupid when they say it.
They lost to Michigan. Ryan Day's getting fired. They're no good.
They aren't. But
I can hear it already. I can hear it already, man. It's all good though.
Yeah.
It's just Notre Dame needs to win 4 more games. That's all.
So real quick, Vince, you have, just so we're clear, your projected finals or playoff is this, correct? 5 Notre Dame against 12 Arizona State.
Yes.
6 Tennessee against 11 Bama. 7 Ohio State versus 10 Indiana. 8 Penn State against 9 Georgia.
No.
Huh? What?
No, I have. No, it's not.
This is the last thing you sent me.
No, that was the last thing I sent you is what I think is going to happen after Sunday. You need to.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the final. The
final.
The final.
When it's all said and done. Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Not for this upcoming Tuesday.
Gotcha. Okay.
Final deal.
Yep. Final deal.
And then you have Oregon, Texas, Boise, or Oregon, Texas, SMU, and Boise.
Correct.
So then Notre Dame would play Arizona State and Boise in the second round. The only thing that I would push back on is I still think there's a possibility that if Penn State plays Texas or Oregon tough, that Notre Dame would be the 5, and then they would play Bama as the 11 seed, or 6. Notre Dame would be the 6. They play Bama as this 11 seed, and then they'd play SMU in round 2 based on your projection. Because I do agree with your top 4. I do agree that if the favorites win, it's going to be Oregon 1, Texas 2, SMU 3, and Boise 4.
And then that puts Arizona State as the Big 12 champion.
I could see them at the end of the day flipping Arizona State and Boise.
I could, yeah, and that's it. And if you're the 5
honestly,
seed, it doesn't matter.
And honestly, they should.
If you're the 5
you're going to get either
matter.
one of them anyway.
Right.
I completely agree. I'm just saying I could just
right
because you're going to either play one of them as the 12 and the other one as the 4. But I could see them potentially doing that. But I'm not as confident that Notre Dame's going to end up as the 5 as you are, but I hope that you are 100% correct.
We'll see.
Yeah. But I would not be afraid of playing Bama or like I mean, the dream scenario for me is Ohio State falls down to like 10 or 11 seeded and Notre Dame gets them in round 1 because I would love. And I know that it's not a Southern team coming up. I don't care. I want to play that team.
I get that.
I want to play that team. And I also would love it if they drop Georgia down to 10 or 11 after getting whooped by Texas and Notre Dame gets them in the first round. That would also make me happy. One of those 2 teams. What I know I'm an idiot and you guys all think I'm nuts, but I want Bama, Georgia, or Ohio State in the first round. I want one of those 3 teams to have to come to South Bend in December. I just do. And then you get us because here's my thought. You're gonna have to beat one. You have to beat one of them anyway.
Yeah.
Why not do it? Why not get that team on your home field? I'd rather get them on your home field than Arizona State, and then you got to play that team on a neutral field down the road. Right. That's how I look at it. Take care of them right away and prove, hey, now it's like, okay, we need to shut up now about Notre Dame, or at least the fan base of that team does. And somebody said it's the concussion talking, Brian.
That's fantastic.
You guys are being harsh, man.
That is fantastic.
28 years ago.
Oh, that's the comment of the day right there. That is the comment of the day. I'm not gonna lie.
So that's where I'm at, man. I just, especially since you're gonna be at home, man. Dude, it's like if you could say what is a meme that you have right now for Notre Dame football. If I had to do it in a meme, it'd be that one of The Rock going, like that's where I'm at, dude. That's where I'm at. So.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for our college football playoff talk. Make sure you join us on Tuesday during the college football playoff ranking show. And you'll get your live reaction from Irish Breakdown and then some analysis following. So every Tuesday night when they have it, this is the last Tuesday night that they're going to have it. And so make sure you tune in.
The next one's on Sunday, right?
I believe so. Yeah. I believe it's going to be
the final
on
one's on a Sunday. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just like the college basketball one, I think is always on Sunday. The college football one is on Sunday now too. So, so this is the last Tuesday ranking show. So make sure you tune in. We'll have a show going, and obviously that is signing day on Tuesday or Wednesday, Brian?
I think it's Wednesday.
Is it Wednesday? Okay, so
yeah, I think it's the 4th, which would be Wednesday.
That sounds right. So then we'll have signing day coverage. We're going to have all kinds of good stuff going on all this week. But, got to stay locked in. And you got to hit that like button, that subscribe button, that notification bell, and share with your family and friends. That's the only way that you're going to know and be locked in with what Irish Breakdown brings to the table. And then, of course, jump on the boards at irishbreakdown.com.